to Lo-Fi. Welcome back. So we got a video on generational change is the name of the channel. The links will be in the description below. This is Jimmy Dore and Kashama Sawat versus Cenk Uygur and David Pakman and the future of left politics with Sabby Sabbs. So you guys, if you follow me, you know Sabby. She's one of my favorite channels. Let's see. You should know Kashama Sawat. She's a big Green Party person. But this channel is all about the fight for the left, right? So this is a perfect video for this channel. So I'm going to cover it here.
Going forward, why would anybody support Justice Democrats or any groups that supposedly are fighting on our behalf? They don't do shit. And I do think, and this is something that I think was really defining in many ways. You know, Jen and I have very strong opinions about Jimmy. But Jimmy was 1,000% correct about force the vote. And we got behind him and that initiative at the time. And then we saw, you know, how Sam Cedar responded to it.
So if you don't know what force the vote is, when Trump won the first time, I think it was, Nancy Pelosi was going to become, no, it was when Biden won. Nancy Pelosi was going to become Speaker of the House. And the Justice Democrats had enough people that if they would have voted against it, they would have had to do the election again for Speaker of the House because none of the Republicans were going to vote for her. And what they would have done was keep voting no until they would get a force to vote for Medicare for all in Congress. And then that, because Nancy Pelosi, she's Speaker of the House, she could put that up. So that's what they should have done is voted no on her until she said that she would put up universal health care on the floor of Congress. And the point is, it wouldn't have passed, but then we would have got to see who voted yes and no. And then you could have voted those people out come next election.
Do it and Cenk and all of them. And to me, it just became about force the vote. And we had, I think, was really defining in many ways. You know, Jen and I have very strong opinions about Jimmy, but Jimmy was 1,000% correct about force the vote. And we got behind him and that initiative at the time. And then we saw, you know, how Sam Cedar responded to it and Cenk and all of them. And to me, it just became clear as day. It's like, you are either going to do the right thing or you're going to kowtow because it's a career. And if you're going to kowtow because of it's a career, then we simply can't break bread with you. And you have to make a clean break at that point. You have to decide, okay, Jimmy's an asshole, but I agree with him on this and I'll fight with him on this because that's what mature people do. That's what people who don't look at this as, oh, did you hear what that person has said about that person? Who gives a fuck? It doesn't mean anything. Do you care about whether we have a living wage or universal health care? I sure as fuck do. And I certainly hope a lot of other people do. And you're going to have to get along with people that you may not necessarily get along with potentially on a personal level, but on a political, economic level, we have to put differences aside. We don't have a choice. This shit has gotten so progressively worse, and I use that term loosely, over the past few years. And it's only going to get so much worse if we do not figure out a way to band together. And that's why what you've been doing, I'd like to think us on a much smaller level have been doing, but we're really trying to coalesce as best we can. Because I do think that enough people want to wake up. They just don't know who to trust. And I feel like Shama is like that rare bird that really she's never let us down. She really has stuck to her guns. And that is extremely admirable. And I think that that's somebody who, if we can put our faith in and say, is there somebody that we could actually give our money to collectively that is going to do right by us? I think she's the one person that you could point to right now and say, yeah, I think she definitely is the person that we could trust.
Yeah, and she's also not running for a political, office. She won the fight for 15 against Amazon in Seattle. I mean, that didn't happen. Nancy Pelosi didn't do that. Chuck Schumer didn't do that. These are things that a lot of the people that are making waves on the ground are just completely ignored by mainstream media. And I said this a while back. I didn't understand.
So for people who are like, where's the Green Party when it's not every 4 years or whatever, or on the off years, Shama Sawant is part of the Green Party. So she beat Amazon for the fight for 15. So we do grassroots things like that, where it's like you go out in the community and you might get a school lunch program going, or you get different smaller things that you don't even really care to go out and advertise. You're not gonna go be like, oh, I did this all the time, right? You just go do it. Shama Sawant isn't like a person who's always on TV, but she's always doing something. If you want to know what the Green Party's doing, look her up. Look up Shama Sawant, spelled right up here at the top, KSHAMASAWANT. Check her out.
Why isn't Shama Sawant on TYT? And I know that she should be, and they can talk to her about how they were been able, or her organization, to make those wins in Seattle.
But again, where is the Green Party in the off season or whatever? The people, the media doesn't want to have people like the Green Party on. They don't want progressives on. They don't want true progressives on, right? Because that's gonna interrupt the flow of the system. We're trying to change things. We're not trying to keep it the same.
It was almost as if they don't want people to hear about it. They don't want them to know what they've been able to do on a local level, because then people might.
Is that true? Cenk doesn't cover. Cenk doesn't cover that at all. Why didn't I would have asked him?
We had
She was invited. This is what I know. She was invited to appear on the show a couple of years ago to talk about just what I told you, like this whole fight for 15 and all that, the wins that they had. And then somewhere along the line, when they realized who she was, it was rescinded.
Can you have six-pack abs without going?
Got to put in work for the Green Party like we work for them abs.
Yeah.
See, I did not know this. If I knew that, I would have asked him about that. I would have taken an issue with that. That's a problem.
Yeah. Well, look, we had him on over a week ago, and
the issue people were bitching about him was that he went on to Republican or GOP things.
No,
that doesn't bother me. I don't care who he talks to about that.
But Cenk still showed his hand when he was with us. And he is still trying to convince people that the fight really needs to be within the Democratic Party. And it's like, I'm trying to tell him, like, dude, how fucking late to the game do you have to be? Like, stop pretending. Like, in his case, it's completely different because his entire livelihood is wrapped up in that business that he started. And he got way too big for his britches. And the one person who truly fucked him over was Dave Rubin, who was the biggest grifter I've ever seen. I mean, it takes a lot to compete with Ben Shapiro, let me tell you, and David Pakman. And aren't you close to where Pakman lives, if I'm not mistaken? Sabby, I really
he really has a beef with Pakman.
I really want to donkey punch that motherfucker.
Like, my gosh.
I have his phone number.
And that little slime bucket. We knew. It's like when you show your hand, you show your hand. When Pakman back in 2017 was advocating for regime change in Venezuela, it's like, that's it. It's over. Don't ever listen to people like this again, because they're showing you who they really are.
You have a lot of issues with him. It is not just Venezuela.
Well, it's the whole masculine male type shit. You want to
punch him in his vagina.
Well, because Harry Sisson is way too young. I would like to smack him upside his head. Another person who comes from immense privilege, but they all do. It's like these outsized influencers that are always trying to sheep herd people back into the Democratic Party. These are not people from struggle. I lived in the Bronx for 2 fucking years when I lived literally on the floor with a mattress. Okay? If you haven't actually struggled, I don't want to hear your fucking opinion about what is needed for working people, because you don't care. When push comes to shove, you will fuck over the people who need the most help. That's what ends up happening. That's why you can't trust Alex.
I think that unfortunately some of the people who may have had good intentions in the beginning about fighting back against the establishment and fighting for working class people, along the way, the Democratic Party made their way into their vicinity and they started making money. TYT, for example, is a business. And I keep telling my viewers that it's a business. It's not like what I do. Like, I'm just sitting here in a room in my house. I don't have a studio. I don't have like.
That's what we say.
I don't have like.
I'm sitting here in a room in my house too.
Like a mic'd up room. I don't have. I have like Corey and Eric, who are tremendously helpful and have helped me a lot. Along the way.
I don't have Corey and Eric yet. I do have my mama. She helps me out.
But I don't have like an entire staff that I have to pay and all. I don't have all those things. TYT is also, I think they have a Roku channel. I think David Pakman also does too. And then there's also a TYT channel on YouTube TV or whatever. But they're kind of, all over the place in levels where the rest of us are not. but they decided to make it a business. I think David Pakman also at some point decided to make it a business. I know the Democratic Party, they got a hold of him.
Well, David Pakman's a capitalist, and he says he's a capitalist. So, I mean, yeah, he's a Democrat. And if Harry Sisson is the one he brought up earlier. He's like a young David Pakman. He's a Democrat. Look up either one of those if you don't know them. They got YouTube channels.
Anytime you can just walk into the White House like that and you can sit down and have a conversation with Kamala Harris, you're on their team. You're not trying to take people outside of that system, and you're also not trying to heavily criticize that particular party. So that's why you're there. That's why Brian Tyler Cohen's there. That's why. So they have those influencers on the right. They have influencers that are also, I wouldn't say left, but more the liberal persuasion. And I think that along the way, unfortunately, some people decided to just take the money and to go with what was going to be profitable. I don't know what is going to really happen with TYT. I think part of it is like maybe Cenk thought that he could tap in to some of that MAGA base a little bit, but I think it cost them subscribers. And then I think another part of it is I think they got tired of not getting a win on the national level, which is why I go back to the Shama Sawant thing, and not just her. They really should have been emphasizing and elevating these progressive wins on the local level. But again, I guess they felt like the clicks and the views aren't there. That's another part of it too. I think that movements really do have to be led by people on the ground. I do get nervous sometimes when people make the call to podcasters to go.
People on the ground, you got to come to the Green Party. The Democratic Party doesn't want you. They showed you with Bernie Sanders.
Lead this movement because that was just as Democrats. And then we saw where that went. So
nowhere. When
they are running a business, I think they're always going to put the needs of the business first. And then you can look at the connection right now TYT has with Poly Market. And we pointed this out when they took the money from Jeffrey Katzenberg, et cetera. I mean, it was really obvious. Exactly. I mean, nobody's giving me $20 million. You know, nobody's, and some of us have said no. There are a number of us that have been contacted that people don't know that have been contacted to go in a direction that's a little bit more mainstream, and we turned it down. So I think people need to start looking around and asking if people started to shift their message, if they're just now saying just vote blue no matter who, and they weren't saying that 2 years ago. I think people need to start asking like what's going on here behind the scenes.
Secular talk.
That's why you are one of the best out there right now. You have crossed a major threshold, and because of that, I know that people have probably approached you. Hey, we'll pay you this amount.
Sabby is by far one of the best out there right now. She's one of my favorite news channels. I've probably said here tens of times. Haven't been on that long. It'll be hundreds of times soon.
And you do this and you do that, and you're thinking that's not why I do this. And I wish more people would take that into consideration. I know Keaton and Russell do, but there's not really a lot that kind of get
Keith and Russell or Do Dissonance, if you want to look them up. That's a YouTube
past
channel.
That level where money starts to get serious and you have to start thinking about the decisions you have to make economically. But if the mission is the primary driver, then that's where the difference will be made. Because if you can't be bought, that's just as scary as locking arms with people that voted for Donald Trump and will say, I believe in a living wage. I believe in universal health care. I believe in clean water. And I have noticed, as I'm sure you have, that there really is a substantial libertarian bend in the MAGA movement that does not support Israel. They do not want anything to do with it. They can see it for exactly what it is. And we've had plenty of people that support Trump on our podcast that are fully against what Israel is doing. And they're willing to speak out about it, even if it is to the detriment of the Trump coalition, so to speak. But that'll come and go. The movement is what will stay. And for those who say that we shouldn't be breaking bread, we know who the people are that are not on the mission, but most people are. Most people in any political faction that is not just sucking up to power understands just how precarious our political and economic situation in this country is right now. It's very dangerous. And we do need to figure out ways where we can coalesce. And that's why I think this conversation is immensely important. Jen, any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, we try. I mean, I'm happy to talk to anybody always. Like, I'll talk to people. I just, it's just a matter of we have to be, and I think you touched on it earlier, Sabby, about like having heroes chosen for you and the people that kind of get crammed down our throat. And I think one of the other things that we do tend to do with that is like one issue people. So somebody who was like so big, like in David Hogue's case, it was the gun issue, but it could be anything. We had Tim down here. It was about one environmental issue, and they are only on their one thing. That's not necessarily with the bigger mission. And until people can really see the bigger mission, that's where people stay tied up in these little factions, and everybody's in their own little thing. And we need to be able to see sort of like the forest through the trees. And it really is a class war. And I think that whenever people are willing to address that, those are people I can work with. You know, when you want to deal with everybody deserves to live and have a living wage and live with dignity, and we all deserve these things just by the nature of our existence here, those are people I can work with. And it doesn't really matter why they think that. You know what I mean? And it doesn't matter to me what their pronouns are. And I feel like that is something that we need to just sort of be recognizes the class war.
All right, so that was Generational Change. I would assume this lady's name is Jen. Having on Sabby Sabbs, just talking about, left-wing politics a bit. They didn't really talk much about Jimmy Dore, but, they talked about Cenk Uygur Pac-Man. I'm more on the Jimmy Dore, Shama Sawat side. You obviously know that, Green Party. Yeah, so we need people power. We need people to join the party. Leave your thoughts, comments below. Like, share, and subscribe. Keep getting your information from across the spectrum.